Hello, welcome to this DCS A-18C tutorial. In this video, I'll be covering mark points and techniques you might utilize with them. So if you recall back to our navigation tutorials and our FLIR tutorials, we were able to set waypoints and also slave our targeting pod to a waypoint. Mark points are very similar, except their only difference is that they're essentially waypoints that we can set on the fly. So if you have ever seen on your SA or HSI pages, this button at the top that says MK1, this is on the SA. It's also on the HSI, MK1. That stands for Mark Point 1. So we have the ability to put our targeting pod, our velocity vector, what have you, utilizing our targeting methods covered in the targeting pod video, over a desired point. In this case, I'm going to put it right down in there. Utilize my targeting pod to get onto a target. That looks good. So now if I press, I have the diamond where I want it to be on the target, and I press the Mark 1 button. The Mark 1 button will change to Mark 2, and I have essentially just put a mark point wherever this diamond was. So in this case, I put Mark Point 1 on this vehicle. I'll go ahead and put Mark Point 2 on the next vehicle. That looks about right. Click the Mark 2 button, and now I put down Mark Point 2. So I'm going to go back to velocity vector slave mode. I have no target selected. And just like our waypoints, we can cycle to a mark point. But instead of cycling up through the list, we're going to cycle down. And now you're going to see M9 through M1. We set mark point 1 and 2, so we now have the information for both of those. Once again, you can see where the mark point is, just like you could a waypoint. And turn around. Just like as if we were slaving our velocity vector to a waypoint, we can then press the weapon designate button. And now our targeting pod is slaved to where we set that mark point. So I'll reset it and I'll demonstrate that again. Back to velocity vector, targeting pod's looking forward. Select the mark point we want. I'll select mark point 2, weapon designate. And now the pod is looking right where I set that mark point 2. This is useful for if you're flying along and you see something that you might want to investigate later. You can mark it and then come back to it. Or if you're trying to do multiple bombs at once, which I'll demonstrate in a minute or two. But one thing you need to keep in mind is you can only set, as you saw when we were cycling through this, a total of 9 mark points. If you press this button and you go through all of them, say I get to mark point 9 and make it, now it goes back to mark 1. So if I make another mark point, it's going to override mark point 1 and continue on through there. So let's go ahead and try and find 9 targets, or 8 targets rather, because I have 8 bombs, all prepped and ready to go. And then I'll make 8 mark points. you're marking points from a distance to use for targeting, you have to be real careful about how you are positioning your diamond because it might be a little hard to gauge it accurately as you're flying into a target. All right, I'll do mark one there. Look for another. Do mark two there. Do mark three there. I'll do mark four there. Do mark five there. I'll do six there. And you know, just to save time, I'll only do six, but you can do this for as many as you want. Now once again, I'm going to reset to velocity vector mode and just show that I can now cycle between all of these different mark points. And you can see where they're positioned on both the SA map by this cursor and the fact that we're cycling through them using these arrows. So say I just did a pass over an area, I found buildings, in those case vehicles, that I want to drop some eggs on. I wasn't able to see them, but line up all of them perfectly at a distance, so I went by, and I'm going to come back in. And rather than you saw in the GPS guided video where I just slewed my diamond from target to target and dropped, this is also another possible way to do things. But I will say 95% of the time, mark points are generally not going to be used or not going to be too useful. Or for that 5% of the time where it is, now you have an idea of how to utilize the technique. So I'll go ahead and weapon designate, it's either down here. And now to drop on them, all I need to do, get in line a little bit more. All right, so now all I need to do to drop on them is select it, weapon release, go to the next one, weapon designate, weapon release, go to the next, weapon designate, weapon release, and continue. Next, weapon designate, release, next, weapon designate, release. And now I sent 6 bombs at 6 targets based on all of the points that I had already put into my aircraft. Let's go ahead and watch those fall to those. Easy as that. 6 bombs dropped, 6 targets destroyed. You can get real creative with the uses of the mark points. You can even use them for navigation. Say I saw something way out in the distance, I could set a mark point to it. Say I wanted to set something out here. I'll just point my helmet at it. Diamond. Set mark point 7. If I go to mark point 7 now, it'll just guide me out to the target. So I can see I put the mark point 50 miles away to my 215, all the way out there. Lots of different ways you can be creative. Feel free to experiment, but that's how you use mark points and one possible way of utilizing them in combat. Thank you for watching.